Today we're going to take a look at the election process in the United States and particularly campaign funding. So how do you pay for an election and what does the money go towards? Where does the money come from? And so our goals for today, we've got several, to explain the various different types of elections held in the United States, to describe the relationship between campaign funding and election results, to explain the strategies used by campaign donors, and to explain the various types of campaign funding. So let's start out by going over the election cycle. We've covered this before when we talked about voter turnout. We said that we have the most voter turnout in a presidential election. Those happens every 4 years in an even numbered year. And in those years, we elect the president, 1/3 of the Senate, and all of the members of the House of Representatives, and possibly, depending on your district, some state and local representatives. And because we're voting for so many things, including president, those usually have the highest number of voter turnout. Midterm elections occur on all the even-numbered years that aren't presidential elections. They're sort of the middle of the voter turnout because they're still pretty important elections. During a midterm election, you're definitely voting for all members of the House of Representatives. You're voting for 1/3 of the Senate. So with those congressional elections up there, that makes it pretty important. And then depending on your district, maybe some state and local people will be up for election. So if we take a look at it, we can see that the black line shows us that voter turnout in presidential years is significantly higher than in midterm election years. The final type of election is an off-year election. They're off-year because they're not presidential, they're not midterm. There are no members of Congress up for election, nobody in the House, nobody in the Senate. Basically, it's all a state and local ordeal. So if there are off-year elections happening in your district, it's state and local people, and they generally have pretty low voter turnout. Now, the process to become president is very difficult. So we start out with meeting the basic constitutional requirements, then we'll go through the primary and caucus stage, then we'll actually go through the election, and then finally you have to win in the Electoral College. We've already covered some of this, and the rest of it we'll cover today and tomorrow. All right, so first of all, political parties. We've already talked about political parties, but one big part of what a party does is they come up with the platform, and this goes into the idea of campaigns. So when we talk about a platform, it's just what are the beliefs of the party? What are the party's principles and how do they stand on major policy issues? So for example, the Republican Party, their platform is they are anti-abortion, they're pro-gun. On the other hand, the Democrats, their platform is that they are pro-choice and they are anti-gun, among a number of other things, but those are just some of the matters and some of the issues that each party has and part of their platform. So when we talk about a party platform, campaigns center around a platform. And the idea is to pick the issues that are going to appeal to voters. What voters think is important in this election may be very different from 4 years from now. And so we'll take a look at each party's platform. Now, of course, once you've got a platform, you've got to figure out how are you going to get your message out there. And when it comes to getting the message out, campaign costs are hugely expensive. These numbers are from 2008, and they look at 1 month of campaign spending. So over $4 million in travel, $25 million in TV and radio, over $2 million in worker salaries, over $800,000 in polling. So campaigns are expensive. In fact, the average cost to win a seat in the House of Representatives is about $500,000. Keep in mind the job pays under $200,000 a year. The average cost to win a seat in the Senate, $4.5 million. Again, the job pays under $200,000 a year. And then to win the job of the presidency, which will pay you about $400,000 a year, the average cost has gone up and skyrocketed in recent years. Generally speaking, about $750 million. Some campaigns have reached into the over $1 billion mark. When you see these numbers, they can all be calculated different depending on if we're talking about direct cost or indirect cost. We'll talk about some of how we get some of this direct and indirect cost in a few minutes. But basically, understand that the numbers may look different depending on how you want to calculate them, whether you're talking hard money or soft money and other campaign expenses, TV ads. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty later. And here, again, you can see campaign spending has gone up significantly in recent years. All right, so where do you get this money from? Campaign fundraising. I want to know, do you think money buys elections? And I want you to explain to me why or why not. Does money buy elections? Well, my guess is most of you said that yes, money does buy elections. Let's hear what the experts have to say. This is from a podcast called Freakonomics. Highly recommend you check it out.
Hey, Kai, thanks for having me. So we're all wildly surprised that Mitt Romney won big last night, aren't we?
Yes, wildly surprised.
And it's just as obvious why Romney's been winning, right? At least if we listen to his rivals. Here's Newt Gingrich, who came in a distant 4th place last night.
All right.
Now we got to go back and figure out how you run in an environment where you clearly have two guys who are going to say things that aren't honest and who are going to spend millions of dollars doing so.
And here's Rick Santorum, who finished 5th in New Hampshire.
I'm a little bit behind the curve in the sense that Governor Romney has been spending a lot of money.
Well, it's not like they're wrong, right, Dubner? I mean, Romney does have
right.
Romney has deep pockets, and just today, right, his campaign said we raised almost $24 million in the last 3 months, in the last quarter.
That's right. And so that makes more than $50 million for 2011. And in previous campaigns that he's run for senator, governor, and president, Romney has spent $54 million of his own money. But you know who else put a lot of money into their campaigns? Let me give you a few lovely names. Steve Forbes,
yes.
Linda McMahon, Meg Whitman. And you know what? None of them won anything, did they?
Okay, so this is the hidden side of everything part. Is that what we're going here?
This is the hidden side of everything. Here's what I want to tell you today, Kai. Money does not buy elections, at least nowhere near what we've always been told. Here's Steve Levitt, who's my Freakonomics co-author. He once conducted a study of congressional elections where he tried to isolate the effect of campaign spending from all the other factors.
When a candidate doubled their spending, holding everything else constant, they only got an extra 1% of the popular vote. Same, if you cut your spending in half, you only lose 1% of the popular vote. So we're talking about really, really large swings in campaign spending with almost trivial changes in the vote.
All right, here's the thing. Steve Levitt, very nice guy, knowledgeable economist. Sadly, though, I don't believe him. Because if you look, it's always the guy with the most money who wins.
You are right. It is almost always the guy with the most money who wins. That is what we know as correlation without cause. So let me explain.
Okay.
When it's raining out, everybody's got an umbrella, and we know that. Those things are correlated. But you know what? The umbrellas don't cause the rain. We know that, too. Here's the thing. Winning an election and raising money do go together, but it doesn't seem as though money actually causes the winning either. It's just that the kind of candidate who's attractive to voters also ends up along the way attracting a lot of money, and the losing candidate, nobody wants to give money to that guy.
Right. It makes sense, but what happens when you tell politicians this? I mean, this can't be a message that they want to hear, right?
Yeah, no politician is going to step forward and say, please don't send me your money.
Right,
I don't want it. I will not use it.
Right.
You know, look, campaign fundraising has become an arms race. And as in any arms race, the first casualty is logic, right? But let's look past New Hampshire back to Iowa last week. Here's some good evidence for these politicians. Rick Perry spent $4.3 million on advertising there, which was nearly triple what Romney spent, and he got 10% of the vote. Rick Santorum, on the other hand, spent only $30,000 for ads in Iowa, and he lost to Romney by just 8 votes. So much for the money argument.
All right, so far this is a lot of you talking about politicians and money. Did you actually talk to any politicians about money?
Well, you think they're going to come out and say, no, I don't need the money. Well,
no, all right.
You know,
fair point.
I did find one former politician. At least he says he's former. You remember Rudy Giuliani, I gather, yeah?
I do. Twice the mayor of New York City, and for like 5 minutes in 2008, the front runner.
That's right. Well, I asked him if money buys elections.
So campaign spending doesn't mean anything because you can spend it incorrectly. I have lost an election by spending it wrong. I won an election, my first election that I won when I was outspent in a Republican primary. We can see recently in Mike Bloomberg's election. Mike Bloomberg spent $100 million, and he won by 4%.
So I asked Giuliani, you know, what advice he would give to candidates.
I tell candidates, it's always better to be the candidate with the most money, but you can win without it.
To finish the sentence, it's better to be the candidate with the most money because that means you're the most popular, right? People like you the best.
It's exactly right. Yeah. It's like saying it's better to be the radio show host with the most money, but
right.
Really what you want to be is the most popular. So,
well, and sometimes that goes together. I don't know.
Sometimes.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Money does not buy elections. As you heard, if you double your spending, you only get 1% more vote. What this tells us is that candidates who have a lot of money because they're popular and people want to donate to their campaign. So again, if you're the front runner, you generally tend to have the most money because you're the most popular. If we want to think about how much does a vote cost in the election of 2008, there was over $7 billion of spending. Voter turnout was 130 million. That means each vote was about $53. Lots more was spent on actually trying to win the election in the Clinton versus Trump campaign. Again, if we look at how much is spent, those numbers are per electoral college vote. But again, you see very, very large sums of money being spent to win an election. So where does all this money come from, you're probably wondering? Well, there are a number of things. Obviously, websites, phone, the mail where you get those little things asking you to donate to campaigns. Those are a big part of where funding comes from. But there are other sources that you probably haven't even thought of. One of the most common is a private political dinner. For example, President Barack Obama, when he was running for re-election, he was in town and he hosted a dinner. He rented out Henry Ford Museum. And at the museum, you could have dinner with the president. For your chicken dinner, it was only $1,000 per person. Now, does the chicken cost $1,000? No, but most of the money is going for campaign spending. And this is how politicians tend to raise a lot of money. In addition, I heard that if you gave an extra $5,000, you could have your photo taken with the president. So just something to think about when it comes to getting money.
Hello, it's Kristen Sullivan. I'm calling for Senator Edwards' campaign.
So I know that you're still trying to decide between a couple of candidates.
And I'm wondering if there's anything that I can tell you.
For me, my two guys are Kerry and Edwards. I'm struggling daily with this.
Well, I'm going to try and talk you off the meat truck, sister.
No.
Kristen Sullivan was among the first citizens of New Hampshire to support John Edwards' campaign.
Is he still in the mix, I hope? Or are you? Maybe. Okay. Being in New Hampshire, afforded. I mean, this is like what grassroots politics is all about.
The Sullivan home is an Edwards stronghold. Last fall, the Sullivans put out their welcome mat and invited neighbors to meet their candidate of choice.
This is our friend Jen Lusick, Peter Delphos.
Political house parties are a popular New Hampshire tradition. From Sullivan's perspective, today's turnout is unpredictable, even with Edwards himself present.
We gave the campaign a list of about 350 names, and of those, we're hoping, maybe we'll get a turnout of about 50. I want to welcome everybody here to our house. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Edwards.
Thank you, Kristen, very much, and thank you to you and Chris for hosting this, and thank all of you for being here. I was just thinking when we were walking through the room, they hosted, really, I think, my first house party in the state of New Hampshire. The crowd's a little bigger this time. In fact, it's a lot bigger. Getting the power in your democracy out of the hands of that group of insiders who are running our country now and giving it back to you and back to the American people. That's the America I will fight for as President of the United States. Yes.
Oh, God. Are you pro-choice?
I am pro-choice. Were you nervous he was going to ask that question?
No, I didn't know. That one's okay.
All right, so that house party shows us a couple things. First of all, did you not know that political house parties even existed? Well, yeah, you probably didn't because most of us are not wealthy enough to actually have them or attend them. But if you've got a lot of money, you could attend a political house party. The other thing we see in there is the kid at the end. Did you find it unusual that he asked about pro-life or pro-choice? You think that kid even knows what it means? Probably not. That's what we call a staged question or a planted question. Remember, when we talked about media, we said every aspect of a campaign is very staged, very planned, very well managed, and that question was probably something his mom or somebody from the campaign came up with. Again, in order to win a campaign, you probably got to spend a lot of money, and the internet is a big source of new money. So when people give money to a campaign, they give for a couple different reasons. There are two different strategies. One is known as the electoral strategy. If you really truly believe in the candidate and you believe in where they stand on the issues, then you will focus on the electoral strategy. You will give money to that candidate because you support their point of view and you want to get them elected because you feel like you have something in common with them. The other strategy is what is known as the access strategy. There are a lot of people out there who really don't care who wins as long as the winner supports their point of view or as long as the winner will listen to them. We call this political access. So for example, a lot of companies and a lot of CEOs will actually donate to both candidates. They don't really care who wins, they just want to make sure that the winner will give them access. And so, for example, Political Action Committee for Detroit Edison, I read about a couple years ago, they gave money to both Barack Obama and to Mitt Romney. Why would they do that? Well, because they wanted to make sure no matter who won, they had their ear. Again, this is a way to get access. Now, there are limits on how much money you can give. These are all regulated by the FEC, the Federal Elections Commission, and people are limited in the amount of money that they can give directly to a candidate. This type of money is what is called hard money. Officially, you are only allowed to give $2,300 directly to a candidate. Or, if you're a member of a political action committee is only allowed to give $5,000 directly to the candidate. That's what's known as hard money. But wait, how do you come up with over $1 billion in campaign spending, you're asking? Well, most of the money is actually not given directly to the candidate. Most of the money comes in other forms. So one way a candidate can get funds is through what is known as matching funds. In order to give the little guy a shot, if you prove that you are popular, the federal government will actually give you money. So if you raise $1, they will give you $1. If you raise $100, they will give you $100. In order to qualify for this public money, you have to raise at least $5,000 in 20 different states, and every donation you get must be $250 or less. The reason for this is to make sure that a lot of people actually like your ideas, and you don't have to have the big-time donors giving you money. If you want matching funds, you have to have a lot of people making small donations. And if you qualify, in a primary election, you can get up to $37 million in matching funds, and the general election, you can get up to $75 million. So if you raise $75 million, the government will give you an extra $75 million to spend on your campaign. Are you wondering where this money comes from? It's technically not your taxpayer dollars. When you fill out your tax return, there's a little tiny box to check, and on that it asks, would you like to donate to the matching funds thing, and they come in $3 donations. So people actually donate this money, it's not actually taken out of your taxes. Now, the more common type of money where most money is spent in elections is what is known as soft money, and there are a couple different types of soft money. One way is donations made to a political party. Well, you can only give so much money directly to a candidate. You can give as much money as you want to the Democratic Party or as much money as you want to the Republican Party, and they can spend that money how they see fit. Most of the focus of money given directly to political parties is supposed to focus on voter turnout and voter registration, but of course you can put any kind of slant you want on your advertisement, and you can make even something for voter turnout or registration support a candidate. Another huge one that you have to be careful for is a super PAC or a super political action committee. A super PAC is somebody who is given money, and they will spend the money to help get somebody elected, but they cannot coordinate with the candidate or with the political party. So, for example, a super PAC can go out and they can take out any kind of advertisement they want on TV. They can take out all the positive or negative ads they want, and as long as they're not coordinating with the candidate, they can spend the money as they see fit. And so they usually take out what are known as issue ads. Again, issue ads are funded by interest groups or political action committees. And again, they focus on the issues, not necessarily on the candidate. And so the key to figuring this out is when you watch a commercial, make sure that you look at the end to see if the candidate paid for the commercial or if a political action committee paid for the commercial. Here's where money comes from, and you can take a bigger look at this if you want. If you want to pause this and take a look at where money comes from and where money goes, this is how PACs and super PACs work. So when it comes to super PAC spending, how much money is out there? Well, a pro-Romney super PAC raised over $17 million during the election. Pro-Gingrich over $12 million. Pro-Perry almost $4 million, and you get the idea. But what is more important is where that money is coming from. So there was a political action committee, a super PAC known as Restore Our Future. They were very pro-Mitt Romney. They spent over $14 million, and they got that money from 58 people. Talk about not really representing all the voters out there. You got a very small number of donors focusing on a lot of money. Make the U.S. Great Again. They got $4.5 million from 28 donors. So you can see that a lot of candidates get money from just a few people. But that helps to sway people. That helps to influence politics. When between Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, over the course of their political careers, they have gotten over $3 billion from the handful of people you see on the screen. To give you an idea, the size of donations that super PACs have, again, you can see that in the election of 2016, there were 23 donors who gave more than $10 million in order to build campaigns. So again, when we see these exorbitant amounts of campaign spending, some of the spending is the official campaign spending, but most of the money is from political action committees and super PACs. And so to give you an idea of how much was spent either by or for the candidates in the last election, Hillary Clinton spent $1.4 billion and Donald Trump spent just under $1 billion. So how do you know whether money is coming from the candidates or their campaigns or a political party or a super PAC? Well, the government passed a law known as Stand By Your Ad. And in Stand By Your Ad, you have to do exactly that. Somewhere in your advertisement, it has to say who paid for the ad. And so if you see something like this,
it couldn't be bigger. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Fiscal responsibility to Washington, D.C.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
So when you see this, you know the money is coming directly from a candidate or their campaign, and anything else is probably coming from a super PAC or a political party. So the last question is political spending free speech. And there was actually a Supreme Court case about this known as Citizens United versus the FEC. And let's hear a little bit more about that.
Money in politics tends to ruffle the feathers of many Americans, and nowhere is it as controversial as it has been with corporate involvement in politics. Some have argued that corporations should have no role whatsoever in politics, while others have felt that a corporation also has protected First Amendment rights. Of course, the First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So, is the speech of a corporation protected? The landmark Supreme Court case, Citizens United versus the FEC, weighed in on these debates, as well as its ramifications. And to understand Citizens United versus the FEC, it's necessary for us to understand a brief history of campaign finance regulation. From 1907 to 1970, Congress passed numerous pieces of legislation to limit campaign spending. This included limitations on corporate, union, and federal employee involvement in campaign funding. In 1971, Congress further restricted campaign finances by passing the Federal Elections Campaign Act, or FECA, which strengthened the requirements for politicians to publicly report their campaign finances and added limits to the amount of money individuals or groups could donate to candidates. It also led to the creation of the Federal Election Commission, or FEC, to police campaign spending. The trend toward limiting campaign spending took a turn when the Supreme Court struck down part of the FECA in the 1976 case of Buckley v. Vallejo by ruling that restricting independent spending by individuals and groups was a violation of free speech under the First Amendment. Still, in 2002, More campaign regulation came as the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, or McCain-Feingold Act, restricted corporations or labor organizations from financing issue-based advertising on behalf of candidates. These are also known as electioneering communications. This brings us to the heated 2008 presidential election and Democratic primary that pitted Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama against each other in a tight race to see who would be the Democratic nominee for president. Citizens United, a nonprofit organization which receives money from private individuals as well as some corporations, released a film which was highly critical of Hillary Clinton and spent over $1 million doing so. As Citizens United understood, the movie could be considered electioneering communications. They challenged the McCain-Feingold Act before the movie aired, arguing that its provision on electioneering communications violated the First Amendment protections of free speech. Because of the ongoing debate about money in politics, the case went before the Supreme Court in 2010. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that the McCain-Feingold Act's ban on corporate and union expenditures was unconstitutional because it violated freedom of speech. The opinion for the court said, were the court to uphold these restrictions, the government could repress speech by silencing certain voices at any of the various points in the speech process. In the end, the decision allows corporations and unions to spend unlimited sums of money on ads and other political tools. These are often described as soft money within politics, as the money spent is not going directly to a political candidate, but helps that campaign indirectly. It is, however, still illegal for corporations and unions to donate directly to a campaign. The debate continues to rage on to this day, and much controversy continues surrounding the role of corporations and money in politics. As this case and many others show, a Supreme Court decision rarely settles a controversy in the public's mind.
So there you have it. Money is free speech, but there can be some limits on that, what's directly given to a candidate. Well, that's all for today. In our next lesson on the election process, we're going to talk about how a candidate gets nominated and then how they actually go through the election process itself. So long for now.